June 4th, 1942. 10:52 a.m. Japanese carrier Hiryu, 150 miles northwest of Midway. Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi's hand trembled as he marked positions on his navigation chart, the pencil hovering over coordinates that defied explanation. Through the ready room porthole, he could see Admiral Yamaguchi Taemon studying reconnaissance photographs with an expression of profound disbelief. Not anger, not confusion, but the dawning realization that something fundamental had gone catastrophically wrong. Impossible. We confirmed her sinking at Coral Sea. I saw her burning, listing, abandoned. The photograph showed an American carrier launching aircraft, its distinctive island structure unmistakable even through the grainy image. 3 carriers. The Americans had 3 carriers at Midway, not 2. The mathematical certainty of victory, 4 Japanese carriers against 2 American, had just collapsed. In the Coral Sea, 27 days earlier, Japanese pilots had left this same carrier mortally wounded, trailing oil, dead in the water. Admiral Takagi had reported to Tokyo. Yorktown-class carrier eliminated. The Naval General Staff had removed her from their calculations. Yet here she was, USS Yorktown, very much alive, her aircraft already diving on the Japanese fleet. Through the intercom, Kobayashi could hear the confusion spreading through Hiryu like wildfire. 3 carriers meant 230 American aircraft, not 150. 3 carriers meant the ambush had been reversed. 3 carriers meant everything. Imperial Navy intelligence had assured them about American repair capabilities was catastrophically wrong. Establishing the paradox. The impossible sight of Yorktown at Midway shattered the fundamental Japanese assumption about industrial reality. In the Imperial Navy's calculations, proper repair of battle damage required meticulous attention, months of work, honour-bound craftsmanship. A carrier with a 551-pound bomb hole through 5 decks, with ruptured fuel tanks and destroyed compartments, would need 90 days minimum in the finest naval yard. The mathematics had been irrefutable. Enterprise and Hornet were the only operational American carriers in the Pacific. Lexington lay on the bottom of the Coral Sea. Saratoga was still under repair from torpedo damage. The new Essex-class carriers wouldn't be ready until 1943. Japanese intelligence had confirmed this repeatedly, yet mathematics meant nothing to the SBD Dauntless dive bombers now plummeting toward Japanese flight decks. As Admiral Nagumo's staff officers recalculated frantically, one truth emerged. They had based Operation MI entirely on the assumption that the Americans could not do what they had clearly done. The before Coral Sea's deception, May 8, 1942. Coral Sea, 500 miles northeast of Australia. The attack had been textbook perfect. 18 Type 99 dive bombers from carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku found USS Yorktown emerging from a rain squall. Lieutenant Commander Kakuichi Takahashi, leading the strike, watched his pilots plant a direct hit near the island structure. The 250-kilogram bomb penetrated the flight deck and exploded 5 decks down, the blast visible from 10,000 feet. Yorktown emerged trailing a 10-mile oil slick down by the head, fires visible through holes in her side. Speed reduced to what Japanese observers estimated at 6 knots. Aircraft returning to the Japanese carriers reported her finished, listing so badly that recovery operations were impossible. Photographs showed destroyers moving in for rescue operations. Admiral Takagi Takeo radioed Combined Fleet Headquarters. 2 American carriers confirmed destroyed. Yorktown and Lexington eliminated. The Emperor was informed. Naval planners at Kure removed Yorktown from their order of battle. In their calculations for the Midway operation, she no longer existed. Captain Elliot Buckmaster, Yorktown's commanding officer, had other plans. As his ship limped away at 20 knots, not the 6 knots Japanese observers reported, his damage control teams performed their first miracle. The bomb had killed 66 men instantly, destroyed 6 compartments, wrecked elevator machinery, and ruptured fuel tanks along 30 frames. By every standard of naval engineering, Yorktown needed months of dry dock work. The journey home, first impossible tasks, May 8th to 27th, 1942, Coral Sea to Pearl Harbor. The 3,300-mile voyage revealed the first glimpse of American industrial philosophy. While Yorktown's damage was severe, her crew approached repairs with a mindset foreign to Japanese thinking: make it work, make it fast, make it fight. Chief Carpenter Boyd Mackenzie ignored damage control manuals. Instead of waiting to properly replace damaged structural beams, a dry dock job, he simply welded steel plates over them, creating ugly but functional patches. The machinery spaces told their own story. The bomb had destroyed the No. 2 elevator machinery and damaged 3 boiler rooms. Engineers rebuilt systems using parts cannibalized from the ship's machine shop, created new components from sheet metal, and jury-rigged equipment meant for other purposes. As Yorktown maintained 20 knots despite damage that should have limited her to 12, American submarines reported her position to Pearl Harbor. Japanese intelligence intercepted these coded messages but applied their own standards, assuming damaged vessel proceeding meant 5 to 8 knots. They calculated she wouldn't reach Pearl Harbor until mid-June, far too late for any repairs before the Midway operation scheduled for June 4th. Pearl Harbor, the impossible becomes possible. May 27th, 1942. 1 p.m. Pearl Harbor Naval Base. Yorktown's arrival presented a sobering sight. The 10-mile oil slick was visible from Diamond Head. She listed to port, smoke wisping from temporary patches. Rear Admiral Aubrey Fitch, who had witnessed the damage firsthand, had cabled his assessment. 90 days minimum required for battle readiness. But Pearl Harbor in May 1942 had transformed from a peacetime naval station into something unprecedented. A forward repair base operating at the edge of possibility. The salvage of the battleships from December 7th had created a workforce that thought in terms of hours, not months. Admiral Chester Nimitz met Yorktown at the dock. Unlike Japanese admirals who commanded from battleships hundreds of miles behind the lines, Nimitz waded through oil-slicked water in dry dock No. 1, personally inspecting damage while the dock was still filling. His pants soaked, hands black with oil, he turned to Captain Claude Gillette, the yard superintendent, and Lieutenant Commander H.J. Pfingstag, the hull repair expert. "We must have this ship back in 3 days." The silence that followed seemed eternal. Pfingstag finally gulped and said, "Yes, sir." Station Hypo, the intelligence imperative. The 3-day deadline wasn't arbitrary. In the basement of Building 1, just 400 yards from the dry dock, Commander Joseph Rochefort's Station Hypo had cracked JN-25, the Japanese Naval Operations Code. They knew AF meant Midway. They knew the attack date, June 4th. They knew the Japanese order of battle, 4 carriers of the 1st Air Fleet. More crucially, they knew the Japanese expected to face only Enterprise and Hornet. The Japanese believed Yorktown was eliminated. This intelligence transformed Yorktown's repair from urgent to existential. Without her, Americans would face 4-2 odds. With her, 3-4, still unfavourable, but possible. The 72-hour marathon. May 28th, 5:30 a.m. Dry dock No. 1. Before the dock fully drained, while water still swirled ankle-deep, 1,400 workers swarmed aboard Yorktown. They came from every shop on the base: welders, electricians, ship fitters, machinists, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers. Many had worked through the night on other ships. They would work for 72 straight hours. The repair defied Japanese industrial philosophy. Instead of careful planning and hierarchical approvals, the work proceeded as controlled chaos. Supervisors made decisions instantly. Workers crossed trade boundaries. The only rule: make her fight. The specific techniques would have horrified Japanese naval architects. The bomb damage. The 551-pound bomb had created destruction from flight deck through 5 levels. Japanese doctrine would require cutting away damaged steel, fabricating replacement sections, rebuilding each deck. Time required 30 days. Pearl Harbor's solution: leave damaged structure in place. Weld massive plates over everything. Shore weakened areas with wooden beams from construction sites. Time: 18 hours. The fuel tanks. Near misses had ruptured tanks along 30 frames, contaminating fuel supplies. Japanese protocol demanded draining, cleaning, inspection, individual repair. Time: 2 weeks. American solution: pump out contaminated fuel, seal ruptures with quick hardening cement meant for runway repair, weld plates over everything. Ignore tanks too damaged for quick repair, seal them completely. Time: 11 hours. The machinery: 3 boiler rooms damaged, superheat capacity reduced 70%, maximum speed limited to 27 knots instead of 32.5. Japanese standards required complete replacement. Pearl Harbor's approach: ignore the superheaters entirely. Accept speed reduction. Focus on basic function. Time: 14 hours. The worker's reality. Electrician Lewis Walters, 21 years old, later recalled, "We didn't have time for proper repairs. We ran cables over decks instead of through conduits. We welded plates over holes instead of replacing damaged sections. Everything was temporary, ugly, but functional." The arithmetic of the repair: 20 tons of steel plate welded, 35 miles of electrical cable strung, 400 tons of contaminated fuel pumped out, 3 demolished compartments sealed off, continuous arc welding drawing so much power it caused rolling blackouts across Oahu. Workers ate while welding, slept in 15-minute shifts against bulkheads. When welding consumed so much electricity that hospitals lost power, Oahu's civilians accepted rolling blackouts without complaint. When the yard needed lumber, construction companies delivered without paperwork. The hull repairs defied naval architecture principles. Ruptured seams were wedged with wood, covered with steel plates, and welded solid, creating what one engineer called a metal scab. Electrical repairs abandoned all pretense of proper procedure. Cables were strung along decks, through hatches, across ceilings. The departure: May 30th, 1942, 9 a.m. Yorktown departed with shipyard workers still aboard, continuing repairs as she gathered speed. These workers would leave the ship as she cleared the harbour. The air group assembled on her flight deck was itself testament to adaptability. Bombing Squadron 3 from USS Saratoga, Torpedo Squadron 3 cobbled together from survivors, Fighting Squadron 3 combining pilots from 3 different squadrons who had never operated together. As Yorktown cleared Pearl Harbor, the workers who had performed the impossible lined the docks. Chief Hull Technician Fingstag would later say, "We sent her out looking like a fighter who'd been patched up between rounds. She wasn't pretty, but she could still throw punches." Point Luck Rendezvous, June 2nd, 1942, 325 miles northeast of Midway. When Yorktown joined Enterprise and Hornet at Point Luck, the other carriers' crews were stunned. Commander Wade McCluskey, Enterprise's air group commander, later wrote, "We knew Yorktown had been damaged at Coral Sea. We expected maybe she'd limp in as reserve. Instead, she was launching aircraft, running flight operations, looking ready for battle." Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, commanding from Yorktown, understood something crucial. Yorktown's presence wasn't just about adding aircraft. It was about shattering Japanese assumptions. In his final briefing, Fletcher told his staff, "The Japanese have planned this operation for months, every detail calculated for facing 2 carriers. When our aircraft appear over their fleet, that certainty dies." Japanese confidence. Aboard flagship Akagi, Admiral Nagumo Chuichi conducted final preparations with absolute confidence. 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Sōryū, Hiryu, with 248 aircraft against 2 American carriers with 150 aircraft. Veterans of Pearl Harbor against Americans who had yet to win a carrier battle. Captain Minoru Genda, Nagumo's air operations officer, had wargamed every scenario. Even if Americans achieved surprise, Japanese pilot superiority and numerical advantage would prevail. The only variable that could change the equation would be a third American carrier, and intelligence confirmed that was impossible. Yorktown was dead. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, who had led the Pearl Harbor attack, was sick with appendicitis but remained as observer. Years later, he would write, "Our entire plan rested on intelligence that the Americans had 2 carriers. Not approximately 2, not possibly 3, exactly 2. If wrong, everything was wrong." June 4th, the shattering. 4:30 a.m. Japanese carriers launch 108 aircraft against Midway. The morning began according to plan. Nagumo held 108 aircraft in reserve for the American fleet, confident in his trap. 7:10 a.m., Japanese scout plane reports, American carrier sighted. 1 carrier was expected. Nagumo ordered his reserve aircraft rearmed with torpedoes for ship attack. Then confusion. Scout reported, appears to be 2 carriers, still within calculations. 8:20 a.m. Torpedo squadron. 8 from Hornet attacks. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron led 15 TBD Devastators against the Japanese fleet without fighter escort. All 15 were shot down, only Ensign George Gay survived. But Waldron's sacrifice pulled the Japanese combat air patrol down to sea level. 8:40 a.m. Torpedo Squadron 6 from Enterprise attacks. 10 of 14 Devastators shot down. No hits. But again, defending Zeros were drawn low. 9:15 a.m. Torpedo Squadron. 3 from Yorktown attacks. This was the moment of revelation. As 12 more Devastators began their runs, Japanese lookouts counted the attacking aircraft. Too many. The mathematics were wrong. There were 3 American carriers, not 2. On Hiryu's bridge, Admiral Yamaguchi calculated rapidly. 3 carriers changed everything. But before new orders could be issued, before the Japanese could adjust, the dive bombers arrived. 10:22 a.m., the decisive moment. Lieutenant Commander Maxwell Leslie, leading Yorktown's Bombing Squadron 3, had gotten lost, then found the Japanese by following a destroyer's wake. His 17 SBD Dauntlesses arrived over the Japanese fleet at the exact moment as Enterprise's bombers, not by plan but by accident of Yorktown's delayed launch due to her damaged boilers. From 14,000 feet, Leslie looked down at 4 Japanese carriers with flight decks packed with armed and fueled aircraft, their combat air patrol at sea level. Within 6 minutes, 3 Japanese carriers were burning. Sōryū, hit by 3 bombs from Leslie's squadron, exploded in flames visible for 50 miles. Japanese response? Attacking the Ghost. Admiral Yamaguchi on Hiryu faced impossible odds. 3 American carriers against his sole survivor. But he launched 18 dive bombers and 6 fighters against the nearest American carrier, Yorktown. As the strike approached, Flight Leader Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi studied the carrier through binoculars and felt his world tilt. The island structure, the flight deck configuration, this was Yorktown, the ship they had killed at Coral Sea. 12:05 p.m. 3 bombs hit Yorktown, starting fires, rupturing steam lines. The ship went dead in the water. For the second time in 27 days, Japanese pilots left Yorktown burning and apparently finished. But even as she burned, Yorktown had already changed everything. Her morning strike had killed Sōryū. By absorbing Hiryu's attack, she protected Enterprise and Hornet for the counterstrike that would kill Hiryu 4 hours later. Damage control excellence. Captain Buckmaster ordered damage assessment. The Pearl Harbor repairs, ugly and improvised, were holding. The welded plates hadn't split. Chief Engineer John F. Delaney reported, "The Japanese bombs hurt us, but the Pearl Harbor repairs are solid. Give me 2 hours. Within an hour, 3 boilers were relit, fires contained. Counter-flooding reduced the list. By 1:40 p.m., Yorktown was making 19 knots, refueling fighters, appearing so recovered that when Hiryu's second strike arrived at 2:30 p.m., the pilots believed they were attacking a different, undamaged carrier. The second strike confusion. 2:30 p.m., Lieutenant Tomonaga Joichi, leading 5 torpedo bombers, all Hiryu had left, expected to find a burning Yorktown. Instead, he found a carrier underway, launching fighters. His confused report to Hiryu suggested they were attacking a second carrier, leading Japanese staff to believe there might be 4 American carriers present. While Tomonaga's torpedoes would ultimately doom Yorktown, the confusion prevented coordinated response before Enterprise's dive bombers found and killed Hiryu at 5 p.m. The final act. June 6, 1:31 p.m. Japanese submarine I-168, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Yahachi Tanabe, found Yorktown under tow. Tanabe fired 4 torpedoes, 2 hit Yorktown, 1 hit destroyer USS Hamon alongside. As Yorktown rolled over on June 7th, Tanabe logged, "Sank American carrier, probably Saratoga." Even in death, Yorktown created confusion. The Japanese never fully understood that the carrier at Midway was the same one they thought they had sunk at Coral Sea. The mathematical reality. The numbers tell the story. Yorktown's repaired Japanese estimate for similar damage, 90 to 120 days. American peacetime standard, 30 to 45 days. Actual time taken, 72 hours. Workers involved, 1,400 continuously. Combat effectiveness achieved, 85%. Battle impact. Japanese assumption, 4 carriers versus 2 equals certain victory. Actual situation, 4 carriers versus 3 equals rough parity. Result, 4 Japanese carriers sunk, 1 American. Strategic multiplication. Sōryū definitely sunk by Yorktown's aircraft. 2 Japanese strikes absorbed that would have hit Enterprise or Hornet. 75 Japanese aircraft destroyed attacking Yorktown. Japanese offensive capability permanently ended. The witnesses speak. Years later, the participants would reflect on what Yorktown's presence meant. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, Japanese. The appearance of a third carrier shattered our planning. Every calculation, every scenario assumed 2 carriers. When lookouts reported more torpedo planes than 2 carriers could launch, we knew something was terribly wrong. By the time we understood, 3 carriers were burning. Aviation machinist Tom Cheek, USS Enterprise. When we saw Yorktown at Point Luck, grown men actually cheered. We knew she'd been hurt bad at Coral Sea, but there she was, patched like a prize fighter, ready for another round. Electrician Wayne Morrison, Pearl Harbor. When we heard she'd helped sink 3 Japanese carriers before taking hits, the whole yard went quiet. Then someone started clapping. Soon 10,000 workers were applauding. Those 3 days meant something. Japanese comprehension. The Japanese gradually understood what had happened, but full comprehension took years. Admiral Matome Ugaki, Yamamoto's chief of staff, wrote in his diary, "The appearance of Yorktown at Midway was not luck. It was preparation. Somehow the Americans knew our plans. The 3-day repair was not a miracle. It was a response to intelligence." In 1962, Lieutenant Commander Tanabe visited Pearl Harbor. Shown dry dock number 1, where Yorktown was repaired, he stood silent for long minutes, then said, "Now I understand. We were not fighting a nation. We were fighting an idea, that anything is possible if you work hard enough. We believed in spirit over matter. Americans believed in matter properly applied." Admiral Shigeru Fukudome in his memoirs. Yorktown taught us the war was lost before it began. Any nation that could repair such damage in 3 days could not be defeated by any nation that required 3 months. It was mathematics. The repair philosophy. Yorktown's repair revealed fundamental differences in approach Japanese philosophy, perfection, craftsmanship, honor in detail. Damaged ships must be restored completely, time less important than quality. American philosophy, function, speed, adaptation. Damaged ships need to fight, not look pretty. Time is everything. This difference extended beyond ship repair. Japan built exquisite aircraft, perfectly engineered, handcrafted. America built good enough aircraft by thousands, each interchangeable, repairable with whatever was available. The intelligence victory. Station hypos code breaking made Yorktown's repair urgent, but the repair made the intelligence actionable. Without Yorktown, Admirals Nimitz and Fletcher might not have risked battle. With her, the odds became acceptable. Commander Rochefort later said, "We could read their mail, but reading meant nothing if we couldn't act." Yorktown gave us the strength to act. Those shipyard workers were as important as any codebreaker. The lasting impact. Yorktown's repair revolutionized naval damage control doctrine. Speed over perfection became standard. Function over form became doctrine. Innovation over procedure became practice. The Yorktown Standard emerged. Any ship that floats can be saved. The repair also demonstrated American industrial character to the world. The workers who fixed Yorktown in 72 hours represented the workers who would build Liberty ships in 4 days, B-24 bombers in 63 minutes, and ultimately the atomic bomb in 3 years. Post-war recognition. In 1985, surviving Pearl Harbor workers met with Yorktown veterans in Hawaii for the battle's anniversary. Lewis Walters, the electrician who had strung cables for 72 hours, met Tom Lee, a gunner whose battle station depended on those cables. "Your wiring saved my life," Leah said. "When we took the first bomb hit, primary power failed, but your backup cables kept my guns firing." Walters replied, "We knew boys would depend on our work. Every weld, every wire, every patch, we imagined someone's son needing it to work." Admiral Nimitz's assessment. After the war, Admiral Nimitz provided the definitive evaluation. The 3 days Yorktown spent in dry dock may have been the most important 3 days of the Pacific War. Not because of the repair itself, remarkable though it was, but because of what it represented: American democracy mobilized, American workers committed, American industry unleashed. The Japanese came to Midway expecting to fight the America they imagined, slow, soft, divided. Instead, they met the America that existed, fast, tough, united. Yorktown was the proof. A ship they knew they had crippled appeared whole. When Japanese pilots saw Yorktown's aircraft over their carriers, they saw more than planes. They saw American will made manifest. They saw the future, a world where industrial might and human determination could overcome any challenge. The workers who repaired Yorktown didn't just fix a ship, they demonstrated a national characteristic that would win the war. In those 3 days, Pearl Harbor's workers proved that in America, impossible was just another word for not yet done. The numbers that define victory. The final accounting reveals the mathematical truth. Investment, 72 hours of labour. 1,400 workers. $2.2 million in materials. 3 days removed from other projects. Return. 1 Japanese carrier definitively sunk by Yorktown's aircraft. 2 Japanese strikes absorbed. 322 Japanese aircraft destroyed in battle. 3,057 Japanese personnel killed. Japanese offensive capability ended permanently. Demonstration. American repair capability exceeded Japanese estimates by 3,000%. Validation of rapid repair philosophy. Creation of new damage control standards. Inspiration for accelerated production throughout American industry. The enduring question. For the Japanese, one question remained. How did Americans know to repair Yorktown so quickly? How did they know Midway would happen on June 4th? The answer, American codebreakers were reading Japanese messages in real time, wouldn't be revealed for decades. But even without knowing about the code breaking, the presence of Yorktown at precisely the right moment should have told them everything. The Americans knew their plans completely. Modern legacy. Today's US Navy still teaches the Yorktown lesson. Speed matters more than perfection. Adaptation beats planning. The enemy won't wait for perfect repairs. Modern damage control doctrine, emphasizing rapid restoration over complete repair, traces directly to Yorktown's 72 hours in dry dock. Every sailor learns the story. Every damage controlman knows the standard. Captain Buckmaster's summary. Yorktown's commander provided perhaps the best summary. The Japanese expected us to follow rules. Their rules about how long repairs should take. But we're Americans. We don't follow rules. We make them up as we go. Our rule was simple. Yorktown fights at Midway. Those workers at Pearl Harbor didn't perform a miracle. They performed American industrial democracy. Messy, improvised, imperfect, but unstoppable. They fixed my ship any way possible. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't proper, but it was ready. When we sailed on May 30th, Yorktown wasn't the ship she'd been before Coral Sea. She was something new, part original, part improvisation, part determination. She was America itself, damaged but not defeated, patched but not broken, ready to fight. The Japanese at Midway met more than 3 carriers. They met American will made steel, and it all started with 72 hours in a dry dock, when impossible became inevitable. Conclusion. The lesson of 3 days. USS Yorktown lies 16,650 feet below the Pacific's surface, discovered by Robert Ballard in 1998. She rests upright, her battle damage still visible. The Pearl Harbor repairs can still be seen, welded plates, patched holes, ugly but functional fixes that got her to Midway. At Pearl Harbor, a plaque at Dry Dock No. 1 reads, "Here, in 72 hours, American workers performed the impossible, repairing USS Yorktown for the Battle of Midway. Their labor changed history." The Japanese had awakened a sleeping giant at Pearl Harbor. At Midway, they discovered what that giant could do when fully awake: repair the impossible, achieve the unthinkable, appear where no one expected. Lieutenant Commander Tanabe, who delivered Yorktown's death blow, understood too late what he had faced. We thought we were fighting ships and planes. We were actually fighting an idea that nothing is impossible for those who refuse to accept impossibility. The workers who performed the impossible repair remained largely anonymous. No medals for welding, no recognition for running cable, no glory for patching steel. They returned to their work, repairing other ships, winning the war one repair at a time. But their 72 hours changed history. In proving Yorktown could be repaired in 3 days, they proved America could do anything. In sending a patched carrier to Midway, they sent a message to the world. American industrial might wasn't just about production. It was about will, innovation, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat. Yorktown's appearance at Midway was more than tactical surprise. It was proof that in the arsenal of democracy, the most powerful weapon wasn't the bomb or bullet. It was the American worker with a welding torch and 3 days to do the impossible. And they did it. The story of USS Yorktown's resurrection stands as eternal testimony to what free people can accomplish when they work together with common purpose. In just 72 hours, American workers didn't just repair a ship. They demonstrated that determination and ingenuity could overcome any obstacle, that function mattered more than form, that tomorrow's battle mattered more than yesterday's procedures. The Japanese commanders who expressed shock at seeing Yorktown at Midway witnessed more than one repaired ship. They witnessed the future, a world where industrial democracy would triumph over military aristocracy, where problem-solving would defeat rigid thinking, where workers choosing to give their all would overcome workers forced to obey. Yorktown went to the bottom on June 7, 1942, but what she represented rose from those waters and shaped the remainder of the war. Every rapid repair, every impossible deadline met, every problem solved through innovation rather than procedure, all traced back to those 3 days in May when 1,400 American workers proved that impossible was just the starting point. The ghost ship that haunted Japanese pilots at Midway wasn't supernatural. It was something far more powerful, proof that American democracy, fully mobilized, could accomplish anything. The workers didn't know they were making history. They only knew they had a job to do and 3 days to do it. In those 3 days, they didn't just repair a carrier. They proved a principle that would carry America through the war and beyond, that free people, working with common purpose, can achieve the impossible. That principle, welded into steel and sent to sea, helped turn the tide of history at Midway. It remains America's secret weapon still, not advanced technology or vast resources, but the simple belief that any problem can be solved if you work hard enough, smart enough, and fast enough. The Japanese never understood this until too late. They measured time in months, while Americans measured it in hours. They pursued perfection, while Americans pursued victory. They followed procedures, while Americans followed necessity. In the end, 3 days in a dry dock determined the fate of the Pacific. 3 days that proved the arsenal of democracy's greatest weapon was neither arsenal nor democracy alone, but the combination of both, free workers choosing to do the impossible and then doing it.